You've lived a great life and done well for yourself. But what mark will you leave on the world? How will you inspire future generations? Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand have helped thousands of people answer exactly those questions. If you've ever wondered, what will be my legacy? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Stan and Katie Beth.
Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. I'm your guest host, Diane Robinson, investment advisor with IP Financial Advisory Services, LLC. Today, my guest is Beth Handwerker. She's an estate and financial planner with James Investment. Beth, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so let's get started. What motivated you to become an estate and financial planner?
Yeah, it's been a kind of a winding journey. I had a kind of epiphany when I was in middle school. I know this is going to sound, or not middle school, excuse me, high school. It's going to sound crazy, but I had this dream or vision, let's say, of helping people manage their money. And so that's always something that I have chased after, and I have chased after it in different ways. But that's always something that's been on my heart that I wanted to do. And so I went to Wright State University, which is a local college where I'm at, and they have a financial services degree, which is geared towards helping people. It provides you the education you need to help people manage money, both from a financial planning kind of perspective. And just basic financial literacy stuff too. So anyway, it was a dream major for me. And I went after my, as I was graduating, I was trying to figure out, what to do, and, that panic moment. And I took this training about how to help people with budgeting and things like that. And as part of the training, there was some pamphlets from the Federal Trade Commission. They were like buyer beware things, or don't get into this financial trap, right? And all these things. And I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. That sounds so cool. And so I went to the Federal Trade Commission website, and you have to be an attorney to work there, apparently. And so I kind of impulsively, which is kind of my MO, but I impulsively decided to go to law school. And so I went to law school after that, and thought that I could be a financial lobbyist kind of thing. And I worked in that for a summer, and I was bored out of my mind. I discovered I was a people person, and I couldn't sit there and research to prove that there was a problem that we needed to lobby for. And so I was a year into law school, and I thought, what in the world am I going to do now? And at the time that they were overhauling the bankruptcy code, and they were requiring people to take financial literacy classes as a part of their bankruptcy proceedings. And I thought, oh, maybe I can do that. And so I kind of followed that path for a little bit, and came back home. I went to law school in DC, came back home to Ohio, and realized a bankruptcy attorney only makes $40,000. And I had $200,000 worth of student loans. So, that does not compute. And so
too many people either.
Yeah. So anyway, when I graduated, it was right before the Great Recession. And so it was hard to find a legal job anyway. And so I fell back on my bachelor's degree in financial services. And so I've been doing that really ever since. And I've worked also as an adjunct professor at the university that I graduated from, which was really neat. It was very fulfilling work. I'm sorry, this is really long-winded answer to your question, but I promise I'm going to get to the end here. But I taught at the local university, and I loved it. It was very fulfilling. And I had the opportunity to come work for James Investment while I was doing that. And they're a company, a family-owned company that's been around for 50 years, and they wanted to expand their business lines to include not just investments, but financial planning. And so, and they also were interested in me in particular because of my law degree. that perhaps we could do some estate planning work for our clients as well. And so I've come here to James and been here about 2 years, and we have been really having lots of fun getting this estate planning portion of the business in place and really seeing how it impacts and helps people.
So just give me an idea of your ideal client.
Yeah. So our business model is we want clients who want a one-stop shop, right? We can manage your investments. We can do your financial planning. We also do tax planning. That's something that differentiates us from other registered investment advisors. And we don't just focus on the taxes that you pay today, but really your lifetime worth of taxes. Everybody focuses on how can I pay the least amount of tax now, but we also look at, well, how can we pay the least amount of tax in retirement too, right? So how do we balance all of that? And then we also, of course, do what I do, the estate planning. And so we want people who want to make their lives simple and see the benefit of having everything in one place. And especially with the estate planning, we found that Congress changes their mind quite a bit and the laws change. And so if we are managing your investments and we're doing your financial planning, we're in continued relationship with you. And so we can help you make those updates to your estate plan, just like we can with your investments and your financial plan, where if you're working just with an attorney, you might never see them again. You see them once and that's it. And so we really think that's the people we want to help, who will see the value of having a one-stop shop.
So what's the one piece of advice that you would give everybody?
Don't be afraid to talk about death. So many people, I kind of feel like I'm dragging people through the estate planning process because it's such a morbid thing to people, and they don't want to talk about it and they don't want to think about it. But our illustrious Benjamin Franklin, his quote is, "There's only two things that are certain: death and taxes." Right? So you're going to die. So I think one of the ways that you can tell your loved one or show your loved ones how much you love them is by doing your estate planning documents, and not just the documents, but making sure that you have the right beneficiary designations. Have you funded the trust you created? There's so many things that can go wrong after you die, and you don't want that for your family. I think about, this podcast is about legacy, and you think about, you live this life and you do all these things, and you don't want to mire that at the end by having this terrible process after you die. And so I think that that's really important to make it easy for your family, but also because it helps preserve the legacy or the idea of who your family thinks you are, right? They don't have that negative association of, oh, that was terrible when they died, it was awful. And that's always what they think about. So don't be afraid to talk about death. I kind of joke, just talking about death doesn't make it happen.
Okay, well, estate planning is a little bit more than that too, because they need to plan for today if they want to leave a legacy, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's and a big part of it's so important, I think, to communicate to your family about what your estate plan is and why. And maybe you've decided to give a big gift to a charity. And your kids might go, what in the world did you do that for after you're gone, right? But if you take that time, like you said, while you're living, to communicate with your family and talk to them about what's important to you and why you've done the things you've done, I think that's more important than the other stuff, right? Your legacy is about teaching and making sure that the next generation can handle and can do even more than what you did, right? So yeah, it's so important. And if you don't talk about it, how do your loved ones know what's important to you?
Right. So do you try to bring in the entire family into this process?
Yeah, we offer family meetings for people because what I find, especially as parents age, adult children can become very involved, let's say.
And stressed
and
out.
and so I think sometimes it's hard for parents with adult children to communicate to their adult children because the dynamic in the relationship has changed, right? I have a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old. I have no problem telling them exactly what I think and why, and I expect them to listen to me, right? But as they age, that's going to be different, right? The dynamic in the relationships changes. And so we have family meetings for people so that I can be the person talking about what's happening and why the parents selected what they did. And that can help be a neutral third party so that the parent, it's not this tension in the situation where the parent is, I don't want to say scared, that's probably too strong of a word, but uncomfortable, right,
Mhm.
with telling their children why they think they want to do it this way. So I think the family meeting's a great idea.
So do the children as well think it's a good idea, or do you have some that are reluctant to come in?
No, I think they like it too because it helps. Then they know what to expect too, and it just clears the air. Everybody knows what's going on. And inevitably, right, you have siblings. One um, agrees with everything that mom and dad says and another doesn't, right? And so it's a way to get everybody on the same page and let everybody talk about it again in a safer, more neutral setting, let's say, than if you're at mom and dad's house, and mom and dad are trying to have this talk with you.
I think it's a good idea too, because quite often, after the parents are gone, the children are fighting over things. And
Oh,
so if you can avoid that, to me, that's a great idea.
absolutely. I'm going to kind of make fun of my husband's family here a little bit, and a lot of times it's not about money, right? So my
Hmm.
husband's family, his grandmother died, and his mother and aunts were on the front yard arguing about their mother's wig.
A wig?
A wig.
Okay. Was it made out of gold or something?
No,
It was
but
just
it
a
was just
wig.
that just like they had been fighting about so many other things, and then it came down to the wig, and they were just like, "That's it, I want the wig. No, I want the wig." They're on the front lawn arguing
Yeah.
about this. But anyway, but those absolutely, those kinds of things happen, and maybe a parent has favored one child in the will over another, or in the trust or whatever. And so having that family meeting gives that parent an opportunity to explain that. And that comes better from the parent than it does from the sibling executor who says, "Oh, mom and dad gave me more money," or whatever, because
Hmm.
that's just the way they did it, right? That causes bad feelings. But if you can clear the air ahead of time, and as a parent, I want my children to love each other when I'm gone, right? In fact, that's kind of, this is just the way my brain works. That's one of the reasons we had a second child. I saw in my line of work that only children have it really hard. They are the only ones taking care of their parents, and when they're gone, they're alone. The parents are gone, they're alone, perhaps. And so I thought, oh, I better have another kid just to make sure my daughter's not alone. But I want them to love each other. I want them to be with each other, and I do not want my choices to make their relationship worse. That's the opposite of what a parent wants, I believe.
Can you tell us the situation where that's actually what happened?
Yeah, we had something that has gone terribly wrong, right? I've observed, and um, we it's just you had a we had a the the father passed away just very recently, and the um in the midst of everything, um one brother asserted his dominance in the situation and kind of ran over the parents, right? And it was terrible. And the rest of the siblings are bitter and angry about the whole situation and the way it was handled. And and I'm starting to see mom get some chutzpah again, let's say, trying to assert and say, hey, listen, no, this is what we're doing. I'm still the boss, but it's really challenging. And your heart breaks because they're in the middle of grieving their father dying. And there's this drama, and it's like, that's not what this time should be about, right? You should be remembering your father and grieving him, not fighting with each other,
Nor making your mother's life more miserable.
Absolutely. Yes. More importantly,
yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that poor mother is just lost her partner of 60 years, and she's got to deal with her grown kids acting like fools. I mean, absolutely.
So do you have an example of where everything just worked out perfectly the way the father or the mother wanted it to work out?
So I recently, kind of give you, I missed this part of my backstory, but one of the reasons I've gotten more passionate about estate planning really in the last 5 or 6 years is my mother passed away. And my father is very successful. He had an attorney. He had all these people draw up his documents. And then my mother passes away. And it wasn't like a sudden death. She was a very prolonged illness. So my dad should have gotten advice, right? But we realized that we had set up they had set up a family limited partnership in the 90s and filed taxes, bought property, sold property, done all this stuff, and never realizing that the property that was in the partnership was never in the partnership. It was still titled to my mother. And so she passed away, and several years went by, and my dad went to sell the property, and it was still in my mom's name. And he goes, what? Why is this in my wife's name? I thought this was in the partnership. And so in the middle of trying to sell real estate, which is always a stressful thing, he's trying to figure out how to get it into the partnership and out of his dead wife's name, and all this stuff. And it was just terrible. And I thought to myself when I was watching this play out, and I thought, he had good advisors, supposedly, right? So what went wrong, or how did this go wrong? And he also had a situation where he had a timeshare, a Disney timeshare, and it was bought in South Carolina and in my mom's name. And he had to pay an attorney. South Carolina's weird. He had to pay a local attorney in South Carolina to probate that stupid timeshare, right? And we all know timeshares are worthless. And so he had to pay somebody to do this. So anyway, I saw all of this play out, and I thought, this is just terrible. And again, he should have had better advice from his advisors. And so that's something at James that we want to prevent that kind of thing from happening. And I felt like I got to redeem that my dad's situation. I was working with a client recently, and same thing, created a family partnership in the 80s even, and filed taxes, done all this stuff in the partnership. Come to find out the properties that were supposedly in the partnership weren't in the partnership. And so we worked to get that stuff sorted out. And they also had a vacation property that was just deeded in the wife's name. And so we worked all of that out, and it just felt good to come back full circle and be like, hey, look, see, I'm preventing the nightmare that my dad went through from happening to somebody else, right? And so anyway, that's one of my favorite things to do, is to clean up a mess, right? You get this client, they come in and there's all this stuff going on and they're lost. They don't know what to do. And you're like, I can fix this, right? And you just see the peace come over their face, and they're just like, oh, good. I'm so glad somebody can help me, so that's one of my favorite things to do.
So if you were talking to a group today, which you are, so when would you tell them to start planning?
This is going to be cliche, of course, but right now, it's you don't know when your time will come. And we've all heard stories about people who they become sick unexpectedly and they don't have a power of attorney in place, right? It's not all just about what happens when you die. And you mentioned this earlier, but that incapacity planning, if something happens to you, who's going to take care of your stuff while you're still living if you can't? And you just don't know when you're going to get in a car accident. You don't know any of those things. And not having a power of attorney, not having a healthcare power of attorney is an expensive proposition for people who are trying to pick up the pieces after something happens to you. And so just rip the Band-Aid and do it, at a minimum, get that power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney and living will. That's another thing that families really fight about. In Ohio, we have what's called a living will, which is a terrible name, but because people think a living will is a will and whatnot, but of course they're not. And it's got really nothing to do with living. It's about when do you want to pull the plug? So, but having those, and especially in a blended family situation, you can have a new spouse that says, well, they told me they want to stay on the ventilator. And the kids are like, no, he doesn't. They don't want to stay on the ventilator. Take them off. Having that living will in place gives people permission to pull the plug or not to pull the plug if that's what you want. And communicating that ahead of time so that you're not causing strife between family members who have differing opinions about what you would want. So yes, right now.
So would you say it's more important for someone who has a special needs child or some other special situation?
Absolutely. I mean, the tricky things with what's so hard with parents with special needs children is that they can take care of them while they're alive, but then what happens when they're gone? And so if you give all of your money, upon your passing to your special needs child, which you want to do because you want to keep taking care of them. Maybe they can't work. All right. So they need a way to provide for themselves. But if you give all your money to a special needs child, then they can't be eligible for Medicaid anymore, perhaps. And so you're trying to help your child. And so you give them money, you think that will be helpful, but then they're not eligible for health insurance anymore, which is potentially, depending on what their special needs are, could be a huge problem. So, there are absolutely ways that you can plan with what's called special needs trust that you can still provide for your child, but do it in a way that won't affect their ability to receive health insurance from the state or free housing from the state, right? Those kinds of things.
So I know a lot of people do get trust and they think once they have the trust that, hey, they're set. So how often should they review their trust with a professional?
Sure, we do. Every 3 to 5 years is probably a good idea. That gives Congress just enough time to change things up, and you also want to be paying attention to who do you have as the trustee? Did they die? Is there somebody else? Maybe something has happened and you don't want that person to be the trustee anymore, right? So reviewing it, or maybe your kids are older now, or maybe your child has married a ne'er-do-well and you want to change the terms of the trust, right? There's lots and lots and lots of reasons that we want to keep those things updated. And again, that's the beauty of how we run our business, is because we're already in relationship with people with their managing their investments. We're intimately involved with each other. We know what is going on in their life, and so we can help update those estate plans as life happens, because we know, oh, wait a minute, isn't that your healthcare power of attorney that just passed away? Maybe we need to update that. And you didn't ask this question, but so many people create a trust and then that's it, it's over. But a trust is only good if you put something in it, right? So if you have a trust, but there's no assets in it, the trust isn't going to do anything. So you could create this beautiful trust and it says, oh, I don't want my kids to get money until they're 25 and 30 and 35 and all these things. But if there's no money in the trust, then it's not going to do anything for you, right? So making sure, and that's again part of our process and how we're different from a traditional attorney relationship, is making sure that the trust is funded, because all that work and that money you spend isn't going to do anything if there's nothing in there.
Right, I can understand that. So, is there anything I didn't ask you today that you think our listeners need to know?
Let's see. I'm looking through my notes here just to see if there's anything else I wanted to add. I think that no matter how, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me help you out here. So if you don't want to go through the financial planning process, what's the minimum you should do to protect your family and your loved ones?
Sure. I think that at a minimum, right, you need to have a will. A will, again, is the thing that says, when I die, this is who I want to be in charge of managing the estate and what happens to the stuff, right? And without that, maybe somebody you don't want to be the boss of your stuff becomes the boss. And
that could be the courts, correct?
The courts will appoint somebody.
Yes.
And so who that somebody is may not be the person you want. And because again, you know your family the best, and you know what will work, who works best with what people. And right, you need a will. You need a healthcare power of attorney. Somebody can make decisions about your healthcare for you. If you're not able, you need a financial power of attorney. Somebody can file your taxes. Somebody can write checks for you. Somebody can take care of business if you're not able to. And then you need that living will. The living will is the thing that says, again, what do I want the plug pulled? Do I want to have IV hydration? Do I want to have artificial nutrition, right? All those things, it lays all that out. So at a minimum, you want the will, the healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney, and a living will at an absolute minimum.
Okay. Was there anything else you really wanted to add? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. I was thinking about legacy some more, and just everyone's important to their family and to the world, really. And so you want to make sure that you preserve that in a way that honors who you are and what you want your family to do. I think that is so, so important. So important.
So if you have someone who wants to leave a legacy of a donation, let's say to St. Jude's, which is a worthwhile one, would the best way be for them to use their assets or to use a life insurance policy?
Well, it depends.
Okay.
An IRA is a great asset to leave to a charity, because if I leave my IRA to a charity, they don't pay taxes on it. If I leave my IRA to my kid, they have to pay taxes on it. If I leave my life insurance policy to St. Jude, they don't pay taxes on it. If I leave my life insurance policy to my kid, they don't pay taxes on it. So depending on how your assets are made up of, having some that IRA money go to a charity is a very efficient way to minimize taxes and still honor that wish of giving it to a charity.
So did you find that a lot of your clients like to leave money to organizations that they feel passionate about?
Yeah, those are the people we want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen so many inheritances just blown, right? People, I think the statistic is in 18 months, the average inheritance is blown. And I want to work with people who want to change the world, and so, yeah, we see that. We see people you can do these qualified charitable distributions from your IRAs directly to a charity, which there's other tax advantages to that. But we have a lot of clients do that too. And that's how part of, being in business, you get to pick who you can work with. Right. And so we love working with people who have those generous hearts and want to give back to their communities.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening. And this has been the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your guest host, Diane Robinson. And my guest today was Beth Handwerker. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
For more information on Beth and the work she does, visit her website at www.bethhandwerker.com. www.jamesinvestment.com. And that's without an S on the end of invest, right? Investment. Yes.
That's right.
Okay. So we'll also put a link to it in the show notes for you, Beth. And again, I want to thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more about Stan and Katie Beth, go to pinnaclelegacylaw.com. You can also find links in the show notes.